the home of inspiration every day.
Most people give up on themselves easily. You know the human spirit is powerful.
From news,
countries across the globe have been hit by the COVID-19 virus.
views,
There's a global trend to see an increase in GBV incidences, specifically domestic violence.
sports,
What's he say? It's a really good ball. It's Shabalala.
and music to inspire you every day. This is Vuka Online, your inspiration radio station.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Cycle right here on Vuka Online Radio with me, your host Mogale Mothale. Thank you so much for streaming tonight, and thanks to my colleague for the news bulletin. He will be coming back at 7 p.m. to bring you the latest in the news. That's what we do here at Vuka Online Radio. We always make sure that you are up to date. You are up to date with what is happening in the country, in the continent, and of course, even across the globe. So tonight on The Cycle, we will be continuing with our series of reflecting on the 1 year of the GNU. For those of you who were with us or joined us last week, you'll remember that we had the General Secretary of the UDM, Zandile Piri, and tonight we'll be joined by General Secretary of the Good Party. They are in the GNU. They're in the GNU. Patricia DeLille, as their leader, is the Minister of Tourism. So they will be joining us tonight to reflect on the 1 year of the GNU. What has been some of the challenges that they faced as in the GNU? Remember, this is the GNU. This is a combination of parties that are part of it. In the main, we have the ANC and the Democratic Alliance. And these are the big bulls that are forever fighting, and sometimes they are really threatening the stability of the GNU. And because this is a new thing, this is a new phenomenon, we kind of are trying to learn along the way. You know, we are learning through trial and error, and that is understandable given the fact that we have political parties that are, you know, they differ in their political orientation, in their ideologies, and obviously when they are pressed, when they are faced with issues that causes them to not to lose their identity politically, there will be some rifts, but at the end of the day, they need to understand that it's not about them, but it's about the people who have put them there. So they need to do everything, as political parties do everything, in making sure that they advance the interest, not their interest or the interest of their political parties, but the interest of the South African people. In their statement last week, the Good Party, emphasized on this point that it's about time we stop the political maneuvering and we start focusing on the people who has actually put all their hopes in us as political leaders. So they will be joining us tonight to reflect on the 1 year of the GNU, and also talking to us about the budget. We have a new budget. It did not come easy. We know that there have been a lot of challenges with this budget. And actually, this was the real test of the GNU, if the GNU really can stand. This was the real test. And I think we have passed that test. And as a country, as our parliamentarians, we're able to really work through those, difficult circumstances in making sure that they bring about this budget. So we will be also reflecting on that. So that's what is coming up on the show. But remember, right after the break, we will be looking into some highlights of the week. A lot happened last week. We had the budget debates from members of parliament, that bizarre moment of the MK not knowing what they are voting on. Very interesting indeed. But their leader in parliament, Chief Whip, saying that that was a mistake. They will make errors because saying that she's new in the position, saying that they will actually make those errors. And also, remember last week, lot of arrests happened last week. It is as if you know, something, we just waited for something to happen. It looks like the removal of the Minister of Police has triggered a whole lot of things in the police. There have been a lot of shakeups. I mean, a lot of people were arrested last week. And that unfortunate moment where Kenny Kunene was just found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, that was just something. But we wait to see. We know that he's now removed as the MMC of Transport in the city of Johannesburg. For a month, he's going to be away from politics. But the Patriotic Alliance is doing investigations into actually what transpired when he was found in that house. He made claims that he accompanied a journalist. I don't really know what happened there, but something is cooking, something is happening, and it looks very good. Terms of reference for the inquiry into the allegations that were made by Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi are now out. Very nice to look at that scope. The House of Representatives in the U.S. on Foreign Affairs passed the U.S. South Africa Bilateral Review Act, which will be presented before the Senate in October, which, among other things, seeks to sanction some of the ANC leaders. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how this unfolds as South Africa is still trying to rebuild or to reset the US-South Africa bilateral relations. So that's what is coming up on the show right after the break. But remember, we'll be having our conversation with Bret Herron, who will be joining us later on the show to talk to us about the 1 year of the GNU and some reflections on what transpired in Parliament last week. So let's take a break. When we come back from the break, we go straight into our first part of the show, which is to look into some of the highlights of the week. Stay tuned.
How do you know the life or personal coach you're about to work with is who they say they are? How do you know if they can do the job? At the Africa Board for Coaching, Consulting and Coaching Psychology, we can tell you. So, before you share your secrets and spend your money, check with us first. Visit www.abccccp.com or call us on 012-751-7608. The ABCCP, the professional body for coaches.
Welcome back to the show right here on Vuka Online Radio with me, your host, Mogale Mothale. For those of you who just joined us tonight, we will be joined by Bret Herron, the General Secretary of the Good Party. They are in the Government of National Unity, so they will be reflecting on the 1 year of the GNU. What has been the challenges? What has been some of the successes? Even though one will say it's still early to talk about successes. We just got the budget passed just last week, so it's still early to talk about successes. But perhaps we can talk about, what are the plans and how has it been in the last few months, in the last year? How has it been? We know the challenges that the GNU has faced. We spoke about them last week when we hosted the UDM General Secretary on the show, talking to us about some of those challenges. And it would be quite great just to hear from another political party in the GNU to talking to us about some of these challenges and how they see this GNU going in the coming years, because we would like to see this really, being strong, keeping strong until the end of the term for this 7th administration. So Bret Herron will be joining us later on the show. But for now, we are looking into some of the highlights of the week. And of course, last week, a lot happened. And some of the things that happened last week, it was the voting on the budget last week, the appropriation bill, so which was presented to Parliament. And of course, we know the hard work that happened behind the scene with the chair of the appropriation committee, Musi Maimane, leading that team. Maybe just to break it down a little bit, this budget outlines government funds that will be shared among various departments, and the budget for 2025 will be focusing on reducing government debt, supporting the poor and the vulnerable, improving public services such as the health, education, and stimulating job creation and rebuilding our infrastructure. And we know that our parliamentarians have had an extensive discussions and debates on reducing the government debt, on supporting the poor and the vulnerable, on improving on the public health services, and also on investing more on education. Last week, I had a conversation with one young, very bright guy who said that if you look across the globe, you will realize that there is less investment in education. We don't actually invest more in education. This is not only in South Africa, it's not only the African continent, but even in the West, in Europe and elsewhere. We don't actually invest more when it comes to education. But what we do, we actually see all these countries all of a sudden having money when there's a war. And I found that to be really a very interesting argument to make, to say that we actually don't invest a lot of money in public education. But that's not the conversation that we're having tonight. But perhaps I will bring that young man to the show, and maybe we can expand on this thought. So it will be very important to see government spending more on public education, investing more on rebuilding our infrastructure. And the total government expenditure for the year will be about 2.3 trillion. Of these 2.3 trillion, 1.7 trillion is allocated directly to national departments, and about 1.1 trillion will fund social grants, provincial and municipal transfers, and debt servicing. An additional 180 billion rands has been allocated over the next 3 years for infrastructure upgrades, public servant salaries, extension of COVID-19 relief grants, and hiring unemployed doctors and teachers, and improving on public transport. And of course, we know we have had I don't know how many demonstrations by unemployed doctors in Gauteng, in the Western Cape, even in Limpopo, where they've been marching to departments of health in those provinces to say that we are here, we are available, we are qualified doctors, put us in the system. So we are happy that there's money that has been set aside just to make sure that doctors are hired, teachers are hired, because these are the people who are providing critical services in our society. Let's take a listen to Musi Maimane making his submissions last week as the chair of the Appropriation Bill Committee.
Honorable members, I think all of us can recognize that this budget takes place in severely constrained economic conditions. Our inherent problem is a problem of growth. As our economy isn't growing, it means that we've got lesser resources to be able to distribute to our citizens. I equally so want to urge, honorable members, that we gather here today notwithstanding the timelines that we've been set through the Money Bills and Related Matters Act. But to give full effect to that act means that we have to ensure that our budgeting process is improved. And therefore, honorable members, especially the members of the executive and the government of national unity, I want to urge that going into the next cycle of budget, please let us ensure that we have established our priorities, we are clear where the economic reforms are, we budget accordingly and create plans that can ensure that the budget process is smoother and that the people of South Africa can experience the fullness of participating in their contribution of the appropriation bill. I want to, honorable members, give a few contexts within which this bill occurs. This bill occurs in a context upon which 22 cents of our money is spent on debt servicing costs. It occurs at a time where we have to prioritize supporting the social wage, but ultimately it is growth and infrastructure-led growth that is going to take us forward. 61% of our budget is in the social wage. And if we are not careful in how we prioritize budgeting, honorable members, in the outer year of this medium term, we will be spending more on social grants than we do, in fact, on any other economic area. It is also deeply concerning that as we look at the budget that is being put here, 1% of the total appropriation is spent on innovation and areas that improve growth, small business, trade and industry. These are small budget areas. And that is why we welcome the expenditure being put in the Department of Transport over 1.3 trillion rand over 2025-2026 as a commitment to infrastructure growth. It's going to be important, honorable members, as I want to anchor this discussion to say, let us also focus on reforms. That is why the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure must continue to audit all and identify abandoned and underutilized state assets. This will mean that we no longer have to pay inflated prices on office space.
Well, that was Musa Maimane, the leader of Build One South Africa movement and also the chair of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Appropriations. Let's take a listen to the Good Party leader, Patricia de Lille, and also making submissions in the House last week. Let's take a listen.
Greetings to all the honourable members. The Good Party supports the appropriation bill because it put money in the hands of those who need it most through the social grants, also through the frontline services. But this is not the end of the road. It is a stepping stone and a test for our commitment to a more just and inclusive South Africa. In a country of deep inequality, mass unemployment, stubborn poverty, our budget must do more than keep the lights on. It must turn the tide. That is why, again, we are calling for, at this moment, for a basic income grant. We cannot keep sidelining the poor with slogans about future growth while they are starving at present. A basic income grant is not radical. What is radical is that a country where half of the population lives in poverty. Yes, we support this bill, but we want to put a challenge that next year in the 2026 budget, it must include a basic income grant. But now it is the time for all ministers to get to work and to grow the economy. I thank you.
Well, Patricia de Lille making submissions in Parliament. We will be joined by Bret Herron, who is the Secretary General of the Good Party, who are part of the GNU later on the show, just to reflect on the GNU and also on the appropriation bill that was passed by Parliament last week. Let's move now to, before we move out of Parliament, there was something very bizarre that happened last week. This was the moment when the MK party, this is the official opposition in the country. This is the official opposition. Made a terrible mistake through their new chief whip, who made a mistake to say that we are actually voting against the appropriation bill, not in support of it. Let's take a listen to that very funny moment, if I may add. Where am I going with this? This is not what I wanted.
Honourable members, the question before the House is that the appropriation bill be read a second time. Voting will now commence. The ANC.
Thank you, House Chairperson. With 140 members, we vote in favour.
The DA. 74 in favour. MK.
49 in support.
EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. 35 in the House, voting against.
Order, honourable members. May I just go back to MK? Can you clarify the number of votes, please?
49.
49?
Yes.
Against?
Sir, in support.
In support.
Yes.
So this was the time when they were still confused as to what exactly are they voting on, and later they realized that actually that was after the voting was closed. They realized that they made a mistake. So they then raised their hand to say, "Oh, chair, no, we actually made a mistake." And the chief whip saying that I'm new in this position, I will always make errors. But you don't make such an error. We don't make such an error because on the day there was nothing that was discussed with regard to the ad hoc committee on Kwebani, on Tlantlam Kwanasi, and they are saying that we thought that we were voting on the Mhlanhla Mkhwanazi matter, and that was not on the table on the day because that was in the National Assembly discussing the budget. So that was a terrible mistake. But let's move now because we are running out of time to another issue that actually got us talking last week: the USA South Africa relations that are continuing, to really worsen because we thought that meeting between Donald Trump and the President Cyril Ramaphosa will actually yield some good results, but it doesn't look like we are getting anywhere because just last week the House of Representatives, a committee on foreign affairs, passed the U.S. South Africa Bilateral Review Act, which will need to be certified by the Senate when they come back from recess. And this bill seeks to, among other things, sanction some of the ANC leaders. And you ask yourself, how is this going to play out? And what are the chances that this bill will be passed in the Senate? Now that they're in recess, they will be coming back, I think, around late September, beginning of October, somewhere there. When they come back, will they pass this, and how will this affect the South Africa US relations? Will AGOA still be safe? Will our trade relations with the United States still be safe, and all of this? So it's quite a very interesting moment to see how this is going to play out as through Department of International Relations and the presidency, South Africa is engaging, as they are saying, they're engaging with their US counterparts. Let's just take the next few moments and just listen to some of the submissions that were made in the House of Representatives as they were actually beginning to make their points. Let's start with the man who actually brought this bill into the House, Ronnie Jackson.
South Africa has enjoyed a rich partnership with the United States, particularly in terms of trade, counterterrorism cooperation, and global health. Recently, however, South Africa has abandoned America and our allies and increasingly aligned itself with our adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, and Iranian military proxies like Hamas. My bill, the U.S.-South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act, will provide the President and the Secretary of State with the tools needed to conduct a full review of the U.S.-South Africa bilateral relationship and determine whether South Africa has engaged in activities that undermine United States national security or foreign policy interest. In addition, my bill will give the Trump administration the authorities needed to identify and sanction corrupt officials of the ANC and continue to align with China, Iran, Russia, and have abandoned the United States in the process.
Well, that was Ronnie Jackson. This is the man who brought this bill in early April, I think, the very beginning of April. So it looks like this bill is getting more attention, and we will see how everything unfolds as it will be presented in the House, in the Senate, in October, if I'm not mistaken. Then we'll see how that will actually work out. Let's now take a listen to Representative Jonathan L. Jackson, who is representing the Democrats in the House of Representatives.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Meeks, I rise today in strong opposition to H.R. 2633, the U.S. House South African Bilateral Relations Review Act of 2025. This resolution does absolutely nothing to advance our bilateral relations with South Africa and, in fact, threatens to undermine it at a time when strengthening its relationship is crucial. This bill proposes a full review of our relationship with South Africa, and must I say, it's less than 30 years old before there was a segregated, apartheid-backed South African government that the United States was on the wrong side of the people of South Africa. This bill proposes a full review of our relationship, as long as is the focus on the South African government and ANC leaders for potential sanctions. This is not diplomacy, this is coercion. And it's based on a deeply flawed premise that ignores the complexities and international relationships and significant strides we've made together.
Well, that was Representative Jonathan L. Jackson, who is representing the Democrats in the House, just making submissions rejecting this bill. But we know that that bill was voted in favor, and it's now going to be presented in the Senate, and then after that, the president will definitely not even hesitate, as we know him, to put a pen on it, and then the games begins. Let's leave it here for the highlights. We are back right after this short break with Bret Herron, the General Secretary of the Good Party, who will be joining us to reflect on the 1 year of the GNU. Stay tuned.
The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is a professional development center for professionals who aim to improve their professional standing. This means that the learning programs we run are more than just academic programs. They are work-based programs that focus on leveraging your current experience as a professional to build your overall profile. A year down the line, the Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is developing into a preferred center for professional development in Pretoria, with 8 professional development faculties including accounting, teaching, entrepreneurship, as well as IT and many more. For more information, go to acwbl.org or dial +27 12 751 7608. The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning, where work is learning.
So this evening with me, your host Mogale Mothale, right here on Vuka Online Radio. On the line, we are joined by Bret Herron, the Good Party General Secretary, to reflect with us on the 1 year of the GNU. It's been a year since the formation of the GNU, which came with lot of expectations from the general public after 30 years of one party that has been in power, the ANC, and in the last 30 years, there's little to show for the freedom that we attained in 1994. On the line, as I've said, we have Bret Herron to reflect on the GNU as they are part of the GNU. You will know that their leader, Patricia de Lille, is the Minister of Tourism in the country. So without any waste of time, good evening, Herron, and welcome to Vuka.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. Maybe to start here, it's been a year since the formation of the GNU. Your thoughts as the Good Party on some of the developments in the last year?
Look, I think on the positive side, we've demonstrated to South Africa and to the world that as a country, we accept the outcome of democratic elections. And the ANC lost power after being a majority government for 30 years. And they accepted the outcome of the elections and then pursued a coalition government, which is a democratic outcome. And so we must acknowledge that despite all the doomsday predictors who thought that, if the ANC ever lost in an election, they would not give up power and there would be chaos and violence. And so we disproved the pessimists on the continent, in the country, in the West, in the western part of the world, that this is not a stable democracy. So we have a stable democracy, and it gave way to a coalition government. But within that coalition government, I think we haven't really achieved what we set out to achieve when we signed the statement of intent a year ago. And there's been a lot of political posturing, particularly between the two largest parties in the GNU, that is the ANC and the DA. And to some extent, I think while on the one hand we can celebrate that we accepted the outcomes of a democratic election, the coalition government, I think, has demonstrated to South Africans what instability can look like, and that coalition governments can be problematic if players that are in the coalition government don't have the maturity to govern in the interests of South Africa and drive party political agendas.
And what has been the role of the Good Party in the GNU in bringing about good governance? We are not there yet. We are far from that. If you consider some of the reports by the Auditor General and even the President himself, having been in Johannesburg at the City Council, having been in the Northern Cape, accountability, we seem to be not turning the corner on accountability, rooting out corruption. It is still a journey. What has been the role of the Good Party in bringing about some of these key pillars if we are to talk about a South Africa that is working, a South Africa that is moving forward?
So, I mean, we've, from the start in this coalition government, when we signed the statement of intent, the statement of intent is influenced by the Good Party because we inserted stuff into that statement of intent that wasn't there before. So in other words, other parties had negotiated with the ANC and with each other, but had ignored things like restructuring our towns and cities so that they were more spatially just. So removing the apartheid spatial injustices, the remnants of the Group Areas Act. The fact that spatial transformation is in the GNU statement of intent is because the Good Party insisted that it be there. The protection of social wage, all the social grant beneficiaries, and the stabilization of social security, so moving towards a basic income grant. The fact that the protection of the social wage and the social grants is in the statement of intent was also something that we put in there. And then every day, I mean, where we're represented in local governments, we fight for clean governance. We were in coalition, for example, in the George municipality in the Western Cape, and we exited that coalition government, which was with the DA, because the DA wanted to silence us on the collapse of the George building that killed 34 people. And all the investigations that have been done into why that building collapsed, we have been fighting for those reports to be made public so that there is accountability. Where we are co-governing in national government and in local government, we are constantly fighting for accountability and for transparency. And when we have resistance, even from parties like the DA, who are supposedly the party of good governance, who wouldn't allow us to raise questions around why that building in George collapsed and who is responsible, we exited that coalition and we're holding them accountable from outside of the government.
And I think holding each other to account, it's what is going to make the GNU to work, because there are those who are criticizing the GNU to say that it has in a way weakened the opposition because you only have the MK and also the EFF, that they are only opposition parties in parliament at this point. And how are you as the Good Party going to draw the line in terms of making sure that those who are in ministerial positions, those who are the DGs and everybody else who is in government, you are going to hold them accountable regardless of whether you are in this government of national unity together?
Well, I mean, we have to do it every day within the government of national unity. And I think that's part of the challenge that I was describing earlier, that parties are struggling to operate within the government of national unity, like the Democratic Alliance, who wants to be in government but also in opposition. And our approach is that we have an agreement the statement of intent. That agreement commits us to accountability, commits us to rooting out corruption, commits us to a program of priorities, and we fight for the implementation of that statement of intent within the Government of National Unity structures. And the Government of National Unity has got three structures. It is a cabinet, which is the government arm, and then it has the Party Political Leaders Forum, which is a political arm chaired by the president, where all leaders of the parties in the GNU are represented, and that's a place to fight our political battles amongst ourselves. And then there's the clearinghouse, which is chaired by the deputy president, which is the dispute resolution committee, and I serve and represent the Good Party on that. And that's where we resolve, for example, the Bella Act, the implementation of the Bella Act, which the Democratic Alliance was disputing. So we operate within the structures of the GNU, and we fight battles around policy differences, accountability issues. For example, the tabling of the budget and how that was handled. We fight them within those structures because that's what we committed to do. But to the South African public and to the world, we are trying to develop a coherent government.
Yes, and maybe as we are drawing nearer to a close, I'm sure you're aware, everybody's aware of some of the allegations that were made by General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, and of course it implicated the minister, or the former minister of police, who is now on special leave, and the president responded by putting together a commission of inquiry to probe these allegations. Your thoughts on that as Good Party?
So I think, our response was, and our position before the president announced the commission of inquiry was that the question that arises from General Mkhwanazi's allegations is which body in the state is credible enough to investigate these allegations. Because the allegations implicated the political leadership of the police, it implicated the National Prosecuting Authority, it implicated the judiciary, and it implicated senior ranking officials in the South African police services. And it said that there was a link between these high-ranking officials and organized crime. So you can hardly expect the police to investigate themselves. The prosecuting authorities and independent directorate cannot be involved in the investigation because they're all implicated by the allegations. And if we're going to have a credible outcome that the public will trust, we needed a credible investigating unit to be able to conduct that investigation. And our position was that the SIU, the Special Investigating Unit, which has credibility in South Africa for conducting investigations and is authorized in terms of the SIU Act to investigate public officials, political leaders, the judiciary, and the prosecuting authority when the president gazettes an authority for them to do so. So our position was that these allegations needed to be investigated by the SIU. We think a commission of inquiry was the wrong call by the president because it's a long process. A commission of inquiry can only produce a report. That report still has to, and that report only amounts to what they call prime facie evidence. It still has to be investigated by a law enforcement agency that can ultimately inform a prosecution. And so the commission of inquiry will produce a report. We've seen from history from the Zondo Commission that those reports are not evidence on their own. The police and the Hawks still have to do those investigations, and ultimately it delays the prosecution process. So we would have preferred that the SIU be mandated by the president to conduct a criminal investigation on the allegations made by General Mkhwanazi.
And maybe just the last one before I let you go, Bret. There's a motion of no confidence tabled by the MK party on the president. Maybe just your thoughts as the Good Party on the motion of no confidence. How will you be voting on this one?
Well, I think the motion of no confidence is premature, is a political game and a political opportunity that the MK have taken arising out of this crisis. I don't think the president, we may disagree with how the president has responded to the crisis. We don't agree that there should be a commission of inquiry. We would have preferred a criminal investigation, which is much more urgent and which could be handed to a prosecutor to prosecute. But that doesn't mean that the president committed any crime, breached any rule in deciding to appoint a commission of inquiry. So we don't agree with the commission of inquiry, but I don't think it rises to the level where the president has committed a very serious practice of maladministration or breach the Constitution, which requires him to be removed as president. Similarly, with his decision to place the Minister of Police on leave, there's no constitutional provision for that, really. And the appointment of an acting minister, there's no provision for that. But there is provision for the president to appoint a minister to the cabinet from outside of Parliament, and then to allocate that minister the duties of an acting police minister. So I think that the basis for the motion of no confidence in the president, or the motion to remove the president, is not sustained by the evidence.
No, thank you so much, Bret, for your time this evening. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Well, that was Bret Herron, the Good Party General Secretary, speaking to us about the 1 year of the GNU and some of the developments in the country, including the allegations by General Mkhwanazi, the establishment of the Commission of Inquiry to probe some of the allegations that Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has made, and of course also making comments on the motion of no confidence that has been tabled by the MK party in Parliament. Actually, the MK party saying that they want that motion of no confidence to be in secret, a secret motion. So it's not going to be everybody just voting in public, because they feel that there are those who want to vote against their party lines, particularly in the ANC, and they must be protected. We are going to leave it here for the cycle this week. The cycle will be back next week, Monday from 6 until 7 p.m. Until then, it's a good evening from me. Until we meet again next week, God bless you.
The home of inspiration every day.
Most people give up on themselves easily. You know the human spirit is powerful.
From news,
Countries across the globe have been hit by the COVID-19 virus.
Views,
There's a global trend to see an increase in GBV incidences, specifically domestic violence.
sports,
What's he say? It's a really good ball. It's Shabalala.
and music to inspire you every day. This is Vuka Online, your inspiration radio station.